I'm here to provide a slightly different perspective. We've heard a lot about freelance today. As you could hear in the panel, our approach is slightly different. So Wazoku has 22 years of experience working with open innovation. So we've, over these 20 years, built a massive crowd in 195 countries of experts. Yeah, they come from, I'll talk more about it, but they come from different countries. They have different skills that companies then can tap into to find solutions and ideas to their problems. Yeah. I've also been a freelancer. I will tell you a little story. So when I lived on the Faroe Islands, this was in 2010, I was asked to build an app for a small store on the Faroe Islands. And Faroe Islands, it's a small country, so we didn't expect many people to download the app. But anyways, I launched the app on the App Store, and we got hundreds and thousands of downloads. Yeah, so many downloads. I was like, what's going on? The data is wrong. So I called the company where we built the app, and they're like, no, the data is right. Now the store that asked me to build this app was called Siri, and the day before Siri had launched, or Apple had launched Siri. So we got all these hundreds and thousands of downloads and online orders, and the company Siri made about $40,000 in those 3 days that the app was live. After that, I got a call from Apple. I was like, Cupertino's calling me. So they were like, we're taking the app down. The name is ours, not yours. So that's how I started my life in freelance. So we had a fun exercise with some of our customers where we looked at how many people companies normally deploy to find solutions to problems, right? And they said, well, normally like 10, 20 people, we come together, we find, we ideate and find solutions to problems, right? And then we looked at the average size of our client base, and that represents 0.05% of the workforce, right? So normally companies they're terrible at going out and saying, hey, who has an idea, right? Karina, do you have a good idea, right? John, do you have a good idea, right? Why don't we do it? We bring the same 10 people in. That's just how companies operate. But as a result, the innovations that come forward are often very small. They're minor improvement. They're subscale. They're not to scale, right? And oftentimes they don't fit the customer needs, right? Because you lack that diversity of opinions. So that's why what we try to change. We try to change the way companies work. We try to change the culture of these organizations. And our aim is, we call it change the world one idea at a time, because we believe that every single one of us, we're innovators, all of us have good ideas. If only we have the right tools and processes to capture that, if we have a company that encourages this, then we can change the way we work, then we can solve problems more quickly and in a smarter way. So we know that change is constant. Innovation happens all the time. You probably all agree with me, it just feels like it's faster and faster every day. To the Danes in here, you probably remember social media. I started my social media life on arto.dk, and then it went into MySpace, and then it was Facebook, and then it was Instagram, and then in my professional life, LinkedIn, right? And some of these tools don't even exist anymore. So this is constant change in the world. And as organizations, we need to be better at confronting that. We need to be more agile. And we believe that by tapping into your most valuable resource, you'll be better at it. And now I'm talking about internally. Imagine there's a big world out there. We heard about freelancers, right? Imagine if you did that really good, how quickly you could solve problems. And of course, innovation is happening so fast, right? If we look at the scientists that have lived, 90% of them are alive today, right? It says ever, right? As far as the numbers go back, right? So that's why innovation is happening so fast. But that also means that there hasn't been a better time to innovate. Yeah, I think John said that in one of his slides. This is my CEO, Simon. I stepped in for him today because he's had a NATO conference in Washington. So he's saying that innovation and creativity is not something a few of us possess, but every single one of us. Yeah. So we believe that by tapping into our network, we can make innovation happen every single day. But companies are just not very good at unlocking that potential. And that's why he created Wazoku. Katie and I had a conversation over lunch, and she said that within EY, sometimes an issue is that we have too many ideas. Yeah, all these partners, they come forward with ideas, oh, let's do this and that, right? Which is fine, but we also need a structure, right? So ideas are good, but also if all of you now shouted your ideas, it would be pretty hard for me to prioritize which one to go for, right? And find the funds to do something with all those. So ideas also need action, right? And without the action, they're just ideas, right? So we need a clear structure for it, and we need to have a plan for them. And only then will we drive change. And that's, so over the last 22 years, we've developed something we call a challenge-driven innovation methodology, right? So we focus very much on the challenge. We're extremely good at asking the right questions at Wazoku, right? I've been doing this now for 8 years, and I work with so many different teams, often innovation teams. And I think as part of some kind of playbook in innovation, ideation is part of it. So they come forward and say, oh, we need to capture ideas. I'm like, all right, cool, yeah, let's capture ideas. What kind of ideas are you looking for? And they're like, oh, just, ideas because we need to check that box. So we wouldn't embark on those projects because we want to know what are you trying to solve for, right? Steven Shapiro, he's an author of a book called Invisible Solutions. He's also a partner of Wazoku. And he says here, right, the questions you ask today will predict the future you have tomorrow. So to my previous point is, ask the right questions, and at that point, go out to your audience and say, hey, do you have ideas that can solve for this problem, right? Then you're more likely to get an outcome, or the outcome that you need. And that's kind of to sum all this up, right? If you nail down the problems, right, then go out to the audience, find the ideas, then you will drive change. And that's what we're trying to do, drive change, but also help our companies have the right tools and processes and culture in place and the people in place to be more change able. I was wondering if this was too soon, right? But Deutsche Bank and so on, right? But if you don't innovate, if you don't confront change, you might struggle. We did bank with SVB in the US, so it has been a bit of a nightmare over the last month or so. So how can companies find these freelancers with solutions to their problems? And I guess a lot of you guys here will say, oh, well, I know how. We have a platform for it. And so do we, right? We, as I said, over the last 22 years, we were a spin-off from Eli Lilly in the US, or one part of our business. So in our ecosystem, we have loads of people working in pharma, life sciences, and so on. 650,000 are on the platform today. And we also have partnerships with different universities, so we typically reach out to millions when we launch our challenges. You see here, these are some challenges we've solved for our customers. If you look at it, look at these challenges, they're very different, right? We have here deconstruction of textiles, drug delivery of large proteins, repurposing drugs for pain treatment, right? What is the common denominator between these? Okay, just a momentary pause there, I guess, because the answer is that all of them were solved by Martin Grigorov. He's one of our solvers. He sits in Bulgaria. And he presented the solution to all these challenges, right? So although there's no connection between them, he had the solution and he was paid by the companies for his solutions 9 times, right? So he's done pretty well, that guy. But that's it, right? So how do you engage these brilliant minds? And that's where our platform comes in, Wazoku comes in. We have this global network, 195 countries, so you can solve with them anywhere, right? We typically say that we can give any of you a bigger R&D team than all of your competitors, just like that, right? And you only pay if you find the solution. If you don't pay. Very simple. And these, I'll talk about some stories afterwards, but the people in the crowd, like there's so many smart people there. I saw some of the ideas presented to Novartis, and these, 40 pages on a protein somewhere. I'm like, wow. Yeah. So over the years, we presented 200,000 innovations to our customers. We sold 2,500 challenges. Yeah. And our customers have in return paid that audience about $60 million. Yeah. Someone mentioned that earlier about how we can promote this in the different countries, right? We referred to India or a city in India. These people sit somewhere, right? And we then transfer that money to their accounts in India, or if they sit in Peru and so on, right? So it's quite lucrative for our solvers to participate. And what's quite interesting is that 70% of the solvers, they don't fit, or they come from a different field, and 80% of them don't fit the hiring criteria. So if someone solves for a Novo Nordisk challenge, Novo Nordisk wouldn't have hired them. That's just the nature of it. So it's quite interesting. I'll skip through this one, right? But I talked about internal, but there's also a world of startups and customers that you can tap into, or you go out to an external crowd. Our platform helps you connect all those different communities. So if you have a problem to solve, it's totally up to you who you go out to. Sometimes might make sense to go out to your employees, and sometimes to a freelance community, or sometimes startups. I'll give an example of this later. I talked about different fields of expertise. You can see here, so as we were born out of Eli Lilly, life sciences is fairly big, and chemistry, physical sciences as well, right? But they come from all different fields. So, but as we looked at right before, it doesn't really matter, because sometimes we find ideas in a different field, right? There was an oil spill in Alaska in the 80s, Exxon Valdez, and they were trying to clean up oil up there in Alaska. When oil freezes, it becomes sludgy. It's hard to extract it from the ocean. They're like, what are we gonna do? So they came to our crowd, and someone working in the cement industry said, we have the same issue, right? If you just let cement lay there, it will go hard. And they had a tool that somehow vibrates the cement and it keeps it liquid. They deployed that in Alaska, and it made it easier to extract the oil. So that was in the cement industry. This guy here, Bill Joy, he's the founder of Sun Microsystems. He said that most of the smart people, they work for someone else. They don't work for you. But as organizations, if we look at what we call the long tail of innovation, if we look at the general population of all of us here, right, in terms of expertise, you can spread it out on a standard deviation curve like that. That's the general population. Then we have another customer of ours is NASA, right? They are rocket scientists, and they sit down here. They're super, super geeky in rockets and all that, right? Propulsion and so on. So they think they have all those experts there, yeah? Now, the reality is that it's probably that small, because there are rocket scientists in Japan as well, in China, in Europe, and so on, but they don't have access to that. Now, if we hone in on this long tail of possible solutions, then we have our companies here. Yeah, we have loads of experts. I mentioned Novo Nordisk right before. All these people working in diabetes, right? Great, you have loads of experts there. But all these people in adjacent fields, right? Academia and consultants and freelancers, yeah? We typically don't reach out to them. So our aim is to increase that, right? Help you tap into that knowledge. Okay, I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but I'll try to wrap it up. This is the example I wanted to give. A2A is a big Italian company. They do electricity, waste management, water treatment, and so on. They had a strategy to move electric power stations underground. So these power stations that are typically in densely populated areas, no one wants to live next to one of those, right? They're ugly and generate a lot of noise and pollution. So they're like, hey, we're going to invest 2 billion euros in moving those underground. So they went to their employees, and no one had a design for it. So then they went out to their suppliers, and no one had a design for it. So they were like, we need to think outside the box. So they came to us and said, hey, can we launch this as a challenge to your crowd? And we were willing to pay $30,000 for a new design for this. A guy in Turkey, he came forward with a design, and they looked at it, they were like, we can modify this a little bit, but it's perfect. So they acquired the rights to that design. We helped them transfer the IP rights and so on from this guy in Turkey, this freelancer in Turkey, to A2A. Now, that forms the base of this investment strategy, 2 billion euros before 2030. And that's just within A2A. They also created a new market opportunity for themselves, because other countries are doing the same. Now they own the design for it, so they can sell that to new customers. NASA, a pretty cool client. So they, despite being, all these rocket scientists and so on, right? They're struggling to predict solar flare events. And solar flare events are apparently very dangerous for astronauts and our satellites, and they couldn't predict them. And this was a problem they had been struggling with for 30 years. Again, they came to us and said, hey, can you help us out? There's a guy in New Hampshire, can't remember his name right now, but he came forward. He was a retired engineer, radio frequency engineer, and he had a tool for this, right? So he presented it to NASA. They looked at it. They were like, this is awesome, right? So now they can predict solar flare events 8 hours in advance. They couldn't do that before with an 85% accuracy. Pretty cool. I just thought I'd mention these guys as well since we're here. Also a customer. We launched about 5 challenges. I can't talk too much about it, but one of the challenges was looking at innovative ways to help people with obesity, with their weight loss. One of our most popular challenges last year, I think 600 of our freelancers came forward and presented ideas and solutions, and that they found a solution to that problem or a new strategy. You can talk to Novo Nordisk people about that. But so that was it from me. I think as organizations, we have to dare to think differently. We have to dare to think outside of the box. I think I have 2 more minutes. So one of the another customer of mine, Novartis, a big customer, they had an adverse event related to one of their blockbuster drugs, an eye drug. They had, all their researchers, they have about 130,000 employees. They're massive. And they had tested everything, clinical trials and so on. Now they go to phase 3, and suddenly someone goes blind from taking that drug. And everything is put on pause, and millions are at risk. And the CEO says, we need to figure this out. So they again came to us and launched a challenge to see if anyone had an hypothesis for why this was happening. What was the root cause of this for this adverse event? Novartis is very cagey about what they share, right? So there was very limited information. Yet one of our solvers came forward with a very clear hypothesis. And it was based on something that had happened before, right? 50 years ago. It was just in a drawer somewhere, right? Not literally, but it was hidden away, and the Novartis scientists, they didn't know about it. And this person did, right? And that validated their hypothesis. Novartis has since said, you know what? This is going to be our new approach when we do develop drugs, right? So we go through all the steps that you go through, but open innovation should form a part of that. So that was it from me. Thank you. Not sure if any question or...
Take one question. Is there a question?
I know you were off for time,
Yeah, sorry.
Over there.
Hello, Søren, freelancer here.
Hi, Søren.
It sounds like a very fun to be a part of your organization and come up with fun ideas. But it also sounds like it's a lot of hit and miss. So you said 100 or 500 or someone submitted suggestions, and I guess 1 or 2 will be awarded. Mm-hmm. So I guess you also have to appreciate the funness of just coming up with something and it wasn't my suggestion. Or do people work full time in your organization, or is it more something they do in their spare time? So instead of playing tennis, you get fun exercises and you solve them in your spare time, or how does it work?
Yeah, the aim is not always to get as many ideas as possible, right? Because then you have the pain of evaluating. I think that was one of my points before. It's about really asking the right questions. Yeah, we don't solve all the challenges either. Yeah, sometimes it is a miss, right? Around 70% of the cases, we do find an idea or solution, or our customers do. So that means that they pay out an award, and in that case, we call it a success. Okay, and sometimes they're just ideas, right? Sometimes there's not a solution, but some companies then also see that as a validation of a hypothesis that they have. So they say, oh, there wasn't a solution for this there. We haven't found one internally, so maybe it doesn't exist and we need to develop that out. Okay, but also you do need, in our program, we do route the ideas to relevant people so you can spread the workload with the relevant people in the organization. So if an idea pertains to diabetes, it goes to your diabetes experts, yeah? And other ideas go to other people. Yeah? I think, that was the one question. All right, cheers.
Schønning, thank you so much. That was so interesting.